So I'd like to introduce Lisa Harris. She's a senior lecturer in marketing at Southampton University School of Management. She's currently investigating the role of Web 2.0 tools in education and also developing an advanced school science program in digital marketing. And Lisa's working with a number of colleagues who weren't able to attend the conference. So they're, I think, some of them are attending virtual, so I'd like to introduce them as well. We have, Lorraine. She's a senior lecturer in entrepreneurship and innovation. Leah is the learning and teaching coordinator. And Melanie Ashleigh teaches organizational behavior, human resource management, and information systems. So following June's presentation, we're going to Leung, Jupian, Jupian, of course. Yeah. He's a professor in college of education and human services at the University of Wisconsin. He teaches child development and education psychology. He has 2 doctorate degrees, one from the University of British Columbia, so he is a fellow of and also the University of Lorraine from the education psychology. So welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me at the back okay?
No.
Oh, right. Can you hear me at the back okay?
Yes.
All right. I'll make sure I shout then. Right, thanks for the introduction. I must say I've got them up here on the slide, and these slides are on the SlideShare, which is linked from the attendee list. But so you can read all about it if you want to work out the slides. You basically just now, when I was first considering this talk, I was asked to submit, I'm sure you all were, 140 character abstract. And I just read it down to that. But since then, this was 4 weeks ago now, I've kind of thought about it a lot more, and I've condensed it down even further. And I think if I was doing it now, I would say that, really, in a nutshell, this presentation is about convincing the skeptics. Because we've heard a lot at this event so far about really creative people doing exciting things, and I guess the vast majority of you here have already fallen into all of this stuff, or you wouldn't be here in the first place. But most of the talks that I give are to people that are at best agnostic, and sometimes downright hostile. And so it's a real pleasure for me to be speaking, hopefully, to a hopefully friendly audience. So convincing the skeptics is what I'm really trying to do at home. And any ideas from you guys on how I could best do this would be greatly appreciated. We've had some successes, but I'm sure we can do a lot better. One of my co-presenters, Messi on Twitter, is a Lorraine, prime level about to start. And I just came across this by accident and slotted it in the other day, because I thought it was fitting in quite well. And this is really the message I'm trying to get across to my colleagues back home in Southampton. That you might not want to change what you do, but there are possibly bigger problems if you don't. So I'd like that. Anyway, this I'm going to skip through very quickly because you're all aware of the stuff. We've been talking about it a lot over the past day or so. The model's changing, largely driven by the internet, availability of free materials, quality free materials. I guess you probably have a similar problem out here in this part of the world. We've certainly got a big problem at home about established institutions that have had a good reputation, still relying on that reputation, taking them forward in this new world. And I think that's a very dangerous concept, because we have this notion of the Russell Group, i.e. the top 20 universities in the UK, and they kind of feel they're immune from all the stuff that's going on around them. I think it's a very arrogant attitude to take. And the students are changing as well, and hopefully in this short presentation I can see good feedback from some of our students about what their views are on all of this stuff. But increasingly we can't expect the student to be fitting the traditional model. And again, Leah's theme, the notion of the guide at the side rather than the sage on the stage is a big part of what we're talking about here. And this is something there's a lot of angst about in the UK at the moment, and I think it's probably similar for you. The issue of fees and economic conditions and potentially what that's going to do to the business model going forward. So, one of our biggest problems, once again is something I welcome the feedback on, increasingly international student cohort. And what we've found is that some nationalities tend to be a lot more receptive to technology-led teaching than others. And some groups we have particular trouble with. We've heard about the peer-to-peer university, and this is just another one that came across a similar model going back initiative called University of the People. So again, more evidence that times are changing, and that it's very dangerous for universities to rely on their traditional brands. There's a lot of dynamic new organisations coming on stream. Okay, this slide really just shows some of the things that we've been experimenting with at Southampton, which will be familiar to all of you, I'm sure. Maybe go through these point by point. But we've really been trying out over the last 2 years, 3 years in some cases, experimenting with communities, local communities, blogging. Particularly this year we focused on Twitter and encouraging students to contribute, and also getting external speakers contributing remotely using Twitter. Wikis is something we're going to move on to in the coming semester to kind of build on our repertoire. So it's nothing terribly dynamic. I think some of you out in this part of the world are way ahead of us in terms of the new technologies that we're using. We're still operating at a fairly basic level. And as you'll see in a minute, even this is too much for some of my colleagues. That's just a screenshot of one of our communities that we've used for our marketing students this past year. So, that's just a little bit of an introductory context about where we are in the UK at the moment. Now, what I really want to get at in the short time I've got is this issue about convincing skeptics. We have, as it says on the slide here, a very traditional business school environment. Out of 60 academic staff, there's really only 3 of us who are really actively pursuing these tools, and a couple, 2 to 3 more maybe, who are kind of playing around and would like to have a go, but somewhat lacking in confidence. Out of the rest, maybe some of them could be convinced, some of them I think will not be convinced, but that is the vast majority of our business schools really not engaging with this type of tool, which poses a few problems. In one sense, we can say that those of us that are doing it make ourselves look to be up to date and modern to our students, or alternatively, they make it we're a bit eccentric and weird. I'm sure both opinions may prevail, but it does mean that we're kind of a very small minority still amongst the business school as a whole. And we've also got issues with students, as I mentioned just now. A lot of our students are international, and even amongst the undergraduate cohort, who tend to be much more local, they exhibit a wide range of attitudes to using technology in education. Some of them are great, some of them are completely clueless, and everything in between. So the notion of digital native we've found to be a very catchy one in practice. So what I've got on this slide is a few quotes, feedback from some of our students about how they found what we've tried out in the past couple of years. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative. This from a Chinese student was a positive comment. They liked it, it was different to what they'd done before. They found that they got quite a lot out of it. But as you see, the feedback is mixed. From a UK student, you didn't come to university to learn through technology, things are a bit of a cop out. Said in quite a nice way, but a bit of a sting in the tail. Another positive comment, this is from another UK student, it was different, interesting, got them engaged, made them want to do the work and read around the subject. This one, which was quite a common sentiment, Technology is okay, but we're going to learn from teachers. The notion of the teacher as expert, and the idea of actually contributing their own opinion, they didn't see that as being valid part of the educational experience. They just wanted to write down what the tutor told them, learn it, and then go back to you. So that's just as a snapshot of some of the comments we had back from our students about the initiatives that we tried. So as you can see, some like it, some didn't. Oops, forgot the main one. This is the one that we found actually was the most interesting of the lot. From the UK students, they said, yes, okay, we like this stuff, but we have a problem with it, because we've grown up using things like Facebook, Evo, and we see it purely as a social activity. And the notion of using these tools for education or business is something that's never occurred to us. And we find it quite difficult to make that connection. We felt that because of that, older people actually had an advantage. They could quite easily flip from the business use to social use and vice versa. But his opinion was that students felt that was a very difficult thing for them to do. And that is something we haven't really seen in previous work in this area. So that was quite an interesting comment. Right, I'm not going to go through this slide because I'm converted here. We certainly found amongst our students that the bullet points at the bottom there rang very true. That in practice, very few of our students were so-called digital natives, even though they ostensibly come in with 2 A's and B at A-level, so they're kind of top end of the spectrum. But I'll flip on to the next one.
Sorry. It's okay if you hold on, Mike. Put a stream in. Thank you.
Thank you. So, where I've got to so far then is just to kind of demonstrate to you that we're struggling a bit getting staff on board. We're also struggling getting some of our students on board, although with some parts of the student cohort that's been easier than others. But one of the biggest obstacles that we're facing at the moment is with the actual infrastructure of the university itself. Blackboard we have as a virtual learning environment, but it is not used in any very proactive way. By far the majority of the modules on Blackboard are just basically documents, lists of PowerPoint slides or PDF files. And they're course specific, so there's no notion of sharing across units. We have big problems with the university technology infrastructure. We still use Internet Explorer 6, for example, which is not ideal, especially if you're trying to teach digital marketing. So the people that want a quick solution to these issues tend to kind of bypass the system altogether. And what they'll do is they'll effectively use their own kit, which is outside the university network, and just bring in a file on a memory stick and plug it into the system to use in their lecture. So they're not really part of the university infrastructure at all. And we have the perennial problems that if you're doing stuff online, teaching online, then that is regarded as somehow inferior to the traditional face-to-face model. And any teaching is regarded as inferior to research. That is kind of the sort of Russell Group attitude in the UK, and I guess some of you may well recognise that. But it does mean that it's hard to get buy-in. It makes it harder to get buy-in from sceptical colleagues. Okay, so to sum up, we faced a number of challenges. How do we make what we do respectable and convince others to follow our example? That is something we're working on actively. And I've got just one slide after this which shows some of the ways we are responding to these challenges. How do we actually convince people that think online learning is inferior in some way? How do we overcome this notion whereby we've got some people at one end of the spectrum and some at the other, and everything in between, where very different skills levels and very different attitudes to the use of technology in education? So can we perhaps customise for different groups? How do we get the sceptics on side? That's our biggest challenge, as I've mentioned. And can we take this too far? Some of the things we've experimented with, we've kind of left the students behind. We haven't given them enough guidance. We've kind of thought, yes, for example, they know how to use Facebook, they'll buy into this, it's easy. Where actually in practice, they struggled. So what is the right amount of guidance and structure to give to students in this environment? And again, something that's been discussed at some of the sessions here, the notion of evaluating quality. If you're encouraging students to use the web, find their own materials, then how can you help to ensure that they get the right ones, or at least appropriate ones? So that was a very quick summary of our challenges, and I just want to end by explaining what we've done to address these, and then hopefully I can get a bit of feedback on some of the additional things we might try. What we're doing starting next month is a series of roadshows, which will be both face-to-face and online, whereby two of us are going to go round and basically demonstrate to colleagues what can be done and show evidence of success from the past year, and basically help and provide some sort of training to people who may wish to have a go but perhaps lack the confidence to do so. So we've called that a roadshow. We're also, to extend our own knowledge, we're having monthly meetings led by a member of the group in turn, where we pick on something new that we want to learn, and that person learns that new tool or that new activity and then shares their knowledge with other people in the group. So again, that's about kind of spreading best practice as widely as possible, rather than sort of one enthusiast going off and doing their own thing without bringing other people along with them. And going back to the point I made just now about the huge variety in the standard of students, or standard's the wrong word, but the variety of skills that they exhibit, and also from staff, we're looking at some ways in which we can kind of segment them and perhaps have different approaches for different groups of students, and alter the combination of online and offline activity accordingly. And something that came out of the work we've done this year, where we, in some cases, perhaps assume too much knowledge on the part of students. So we need to be very specific in the guidance we give about how they are to carry out their activities, particularly when they're assessed, because we can't assume that they have the necessary background. And for staff, I think in many cases the staff are harder to convince than the students. And have we got the training resources in place for people that genuinely have had no exposure and actually want to get started, and perhaps feel a bit embarrassed that they haven't done so before. So, oops, that is, yep, my 15 minutes up. So I think we're going to have the other presentation next and then questions after. Is that right? So thank you for listening, and I look forward to some feedback in a few minutes. Thank you.
Do I have to use this microphone? I have to. Oh, okay. I have never done this before. Okay. As you might already know, the title of my presentation is Aspiring Teachers' Attitudes Toward an Open Education Model of Teacher Preparation. And the concept of open education is rather new to me. And this is the first time I am doing a study in the area of open education. And one reason I become interested in open education is because the rising costs of education I think in all levels of education, is becoming more and more expensive. For example, at the University of Wisconsin system, we have been raising tuition fees continuously over the past few years, and this year we are raising it by 5.5%, and then we expect the same thing for next year. And then in the state public school system, the school districts are closing schools, laying off teachers because they were not able to pass the school referendums in order to raise property tax to finance local schools. And then a second reason I become interested in open education is it seems to me that open education meets the needs of many students, including those who have a full-time job. For example, in my college, at least 2 departments are pushing to offer all their graduate courses either online or using a hybrid format in order to meet the needs of all students. The hybrid format means half of the courses are done online and the other half face-to-face. So it seems to me that for one reason or another, open education is becoming more and more important as time goes by in all levels of education. So the purpose for my study is to find out how aspiring teachers feel about an open education model of teacher training. And to do the study, I developed a survey. And the survey consists of 3 parts. The first part of the survey is a description of the open education model that I came up with. And it reads like this. As described here, the open education model of teacher preparation is an alternative form of education that relies mainly on online delivery of instruction. It provides a university-level teacher preparation program of study for those wishing to pursue higher education on a part-time or full-time basis. The model has an open entry policy. That is, students' previous academic achievements are not taken into account for entry to any of the courses. Students will complete all course requirements online, and upon graduation, will be awarded a bachelor's degree from an accredited university and a teacher license granted by the state. With full-time study, students can expect to complete all program requirements and graduate in 4 years with a teaching license. The instructional staff will be highly qualified professionals with terminal doctoral degrees from recognized universities in their respective academic fields. The open education model will use course materials authored by in-house faculty or external academic contributors, as well as third-party materials licensed for use by students in the program. Support for students is available through the internet, by telephone, or face-to-face. Assessment of student achievement will take the form of writing assignments, for example, papers, objective tests, for example, multiple choice, true-false, fill in the blank, matching, projects, and portfolios. The cost of enrolling in this model can be expected to be substantially lower than the cost of attending a traditional university. And the second part of the survey consists of 26 statements, all related to open education, the open education model of teacher training that I am talking about. And then the third part of the survey consists of 5 demographic questions asking the students to indicate their gender or sex, their class standing or year in college, their age, their overall GPA, in other words, cumulative grade point average, and finally, whether or not they intend to become a teacher. And I administered this survey to 100 of students as part of class activities. These students took the survey anonymously, and they were told that there were no right or wrong answers, and the best answer is the one that is honest and represents how they truly feel. And then if they don't feel comfortable answering any questions, they can just leave the item blank. Okay. And after I collected all the responses, then I analyzed their responses for each statement by computing the arithmetic average, in other words, the mean, the standard deviation, and the correlations between their responses in each statement to their sex or gender, their class standing, their age, and their GPA. And the results are presented in this handout here, so I'm going to give a copy of this handout to you.
I'll grab that.
In the handouts, OE represents the open education model for teacher preparation, as I discussed earlier. And then TRE represents the traditional education model of teacher training, which is the program that the students were enrolled in. And if you look at and you can see the means and standard deviations and the correlations for the 4 demographic variables below each statement. And looking at the means, there are only 2 means that are above 4. By the way, all these statements are answered using a scale from 1 to 5. Sylvia, do you need a copy of? You didn't have one? I'm sorry about that. Here, you can have this.
Do you need it?
Can I have one? Yeah. Okay. All the statements are answered using a scale from 1 to 5. 1 is strongly disagree, 5 is strongly agree. So the higher the number, the more favorable, more positive they feel about the statement. Okay, and of all the 26 statements, only 2 of them have a mean above 4. And these 2 statements are question 20 and 21. And question 20 reads, savings on tuition and other costs will be a major advantage for the open education model of teacher training. And question 21 is question 20. Oh, did I mention 21 just now? Did I? Yeah. Okay, so 21. And then the other one is question 20. And question 20 is a lack of the usual face-to-face interactions with instructors and fellow students is a drawback for the open education model of teacher training. So these are only 2 statements that have a mean of 4 or above. In other words, students tend to agree or strongly agree with these 2 statements. And students tend to either to be not sure, disagree, or strongly disagree with the other 24 statements. Okay. And then looking at the correlation coefficients, there are a total of 104 correlation coefficients for these 26 statements. And the highest correlation coefficient is 0.28. And then there are only 9 correlation coefficients among the 104 of them that are in the 20s. All the rest are less than 0.20. So I find the results are kind of surprising, because I was hoping that the students' opinion about this open education model would be more positive. And I was hoping that students who are, for example, older or high achieving would have a more positive attitude towards this open education model of teacher preparation. Okay. So I will just stop here and open for any discussions.
So I think what I'll do, because the audio challenge. If you have questions, I'll run to you with the microphone. How's that?
Your research backs up what you said. Okay, this idea that yes, it's more affordable, but especially the lack of face-to-face is what they object to the most. And that's essentially what you were saying in your presentation, that the students feel like they paid for face-to-face with the instructor and they don't like the idea of being just offline.
Shall I go first? Yeah, I think it's the first time I've seen this, but yes, it does very much support what I was saying, and with a completely different student group. So that's yeah, it's rather disappointing, really. So do you want to make a comment? It's your research.
Yeah, if my study were done 22 years ago when I first started teaching, I wonder if the results would be the same. Because 22 years ago, I think the predominant mode of instruction is still lectures. Right now, I think everybody's going kind of interactive. And interactive, kind of probably more interesting, for students because time flies by. So I don't know if that is one reason why, the negative results on this.
Is it the one-to-one interaction that they're missing, or is it the just seeing them personally? Because even in a large lecture hall, you never collaborate with the professor. So is it just the physical nature of it, or is there actually something to it?
Good question. Now, the students who are responding to my to my survey, mostly second and third year students, sophomores and juniors, and they might have experience in the large lecture classes, when they were freshmen. But I think starting from the second year, especially in our college of education, they are usually smaller classes. For example, this last semester, I believe my largest classes were 35 students. So it's kind of more like one-on-one, close face-to-face rather than a peak class where 150 students, one professor, and so forth.
And did you know if which of these students had taken an online course before? I think that might have skewed your results.
Okay. I don't think too many of these students, these are undergraduate, second, third year students. So I don't think too many of them have taken online courses.
You might want to do the same survey with people who have taken, say, 3 or 4 or 5 online courses. I bet your results will be significantly different on those 2 questions.
I would expect to. And also, even with graduate students, the results probably would be very, very different.
Yeah, I would expect that you are in an urban university, is that correct?
I live in Oshkosh, which is about 75 miles from Milwaukee. So it probably is more like I would say suburban.
Yeah, I'm in a very small rural college, and my guess is that students who are younger and are accustomed to this kind of model, where they go to class, meet with their friends, see face-to-face, that they probably like it. In our community, most of our students are older. I think our average age is 28 or 32, something like that. Most of them are working. More than 50% of them are parents, and so on. And if you ask them, they will say, yes, they like face-to-face better, but it's not possible. Right. So it's an access issue. And sorry, I don't know the name of the man in front of me here, but once they've taken one online course, they tend to like the other ones better than they did. They may still prefer face-to-face, but if they had to come face-to-face, they wouldn't come, bottom line.
Exactly. Now, in terms of the age of the students, 59 of the 100 students are between 20 and 21 years of age. So, they are kind of mostly traditional age students. And then, as I mentioned,
That's okay, yes.
Thank you. As I mentioned, 2 of our departments are pushing to have all their graduate level courses to be offered online or in hybrid. And that is because most of the students in the graduate programs are full-time teachers. So they just cannot afford, to take the time, to drive down, to our campus, for courses and so forth.
Another question? Okay.
Okay. Well, or a comment. Lisa, I think one of the things, do you have companies coming and recruiting at your business school?
Yes.
So it seems like, first you probably ought to find out, but everything I see says the businesses need people that are digital savvy, that work in international groups and so on. I have people, managing people in another state that they've never met. And another thing I was thinking about was the telephone as an analogy. Surely they understand that the telephone has both a social use and a business use. And so if you started with telephone, maybe they would grasp the idea that Ning can also be used for business use, or if you got into Zing or LinkedIn, which are the professional networks as opposed to the MySpace, they would see that there's a difference between social use and business use.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and I think certainly bringing in more industry speakers to kind of emphasise what they're looking for would be very beneficial. It did surprise me that this distinction they made between the business and the social, that they were so emphatic about that, because I didn't think it would be as big a problem as they said. I must admit. So yeah, that using the telephone, perhaps I'll actually bring an old-fashioned telephone into a lecture or something and use it in that way to demonstrate.
You can have conference calls out of hours, and a lot of people work better in a conference call than on a chat line or something. And a lot more of that happens in industry.
Yeah.
Conference calls.
Okay, so, yeah.
One question that I had, because I'm from the UK as well, is when I start speaking to lecturers specifically about open education, and I start going through its merits, altruism, internationalization, which seems to be one of the holy grails at the institution that I teach at. There's two things. Well, there's basically two questions that they always ask. What's in it for me? And if it's not face-to-face, then it's not really teaching. I'm just wondering if you've gotten that kind of feedback from your lecturing staff.
Yeah, very much. That's why I really like the quote about if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less, because yeah, I think people acknowledge that students only remember a very small proportion of what is actually told to them in a kind of broadcast mode, but they still hold that up as the holy grail, which I find amazing. And yeah, I think it isn't just a generational thing either, because we've had similar responses from younger faculty. It's not as simple as saying, oh yeah, but they'll retire soon. Not by any means. It does seem to be very deeply entrenched. But perhaps we could, compare UK notes afterwards, because there's a whole host of parochial things we could go into there.
Could I just add, as well as Lisa and Sandra, I'm also from the UK, and I feel quite depressed actually having heard what you just said. But I'm just wondering whether could you characterise why you've had some of the difficulties? Is it a function of the type of university that Southampton is, which actually, from what I see, is someone that you would not expect some of those challenges? Is it a facet of the subject areas in which the teaching is taking place, or is it could you determine why you think you've had some of those problems?
Yeah, I think that the main issue is the point I made about Russell Group arrogance. It is a Russell Group university. It thinks that reputation is enough in itself to attract students. And from what I've seen, it's the new universities that are much more proactive on open education. And examples, Birmingham City, Bournemouth, Lincoln, just off the top of my head, Oxford Brookes as well. And these are the kind of universities that Southampton would look down their nose at and say that they're not their competition, but actually in this area they're light years ahead, and I find that very frustrating.
I guess why I said depressing, because you're not a Cambridge, Oxford or a Manchester in terms of what you'd expect that level of conservatism. Southampton is often held up as being very, very dynamic in its use of technology and such. And it just feels a bit that you're not really an arrogant Russell Group university.
It's very much a generalisation because the university as a whole covers a whole range of different areas, and some are a lot better than others. But yeah, it did surprise me when I first went there just how conservative it was, and the perennial issue about research being the be all and end all. And it's very easy for people to say, oh, I'm supposed to be doing my research, I haven't got time for this stuff. And they seem to be able to get away with that, which is very depressing as well.
My impression is that there are fears that online education is not adequately interactive, but I teach a 6-credit online oral epidemiology course, and although a lot of the communication is asynchronous, it's highly interactive, and the students are extremely collaborative among themselves as well. I think it works well.
I'm glad you've got a positive example.
It's been going 5 years.
Are you students undergraduate students or graduate students?
Bachelor of Dental Science students, which are 4th year baccalaureate level.
Our department did offer one course at the graduate level, a Foundation for Educational Research, and I think it depends on the instructor. One instructor, got very good student evaluations, another probably not so good.
Well, it is a well-organized program, and there are about 6 different courses with instructional design and lots of support people, so the quality of the educator is somewhat mitigated by the system. Mm-hmm. Though I hope I'm okay.
Okay, it's almost exactly 3:15, so that never happens in real life. Thanks very much.